Yeah. Happy birthday to Uncle, of course. But today, I know we've been talking about The Voice on this program pretty frequently, but it's a good time, I think, with these recent kind of documents that got released through Freedom of Information requests, kind of exposing what we kind of already knew was the agenda, but like exposing them with actual documentation, so we can confirm that it is the agenda that these people are after. We can kind of break down ultimately what this is, as well as a report that I became aware of and read by a conservative think tank, kind of analyzing the voice with respect to the Waitangi tribunal that they have in the United States. Oh, sorry, in New Zealand, which is kind of equivalent to the voice in many ways. It's a kind of similar model, so we can look to that to kind of see what this will ultimately lead to, um, and just kind of putting the whole thing in context for. Obviously, if you're watching this program, you're already red pilled to a large extent, but putting the it in context of how to approach the issue with your normie friends. Like, how would you discuss this with average people? How would you campaign about this? Because I do think that this is, unlike regular politics, this referendum is something that is really kind of worth you know involving ourselves in. Even though, like, a regular election, it's like, well, I don't really support any of these candidates. Who cares? Um, this is really like something that will structurally change Australia, and it's a question. Ultimately, it's a referendum on like the existential validity of Australia itself. And so, yeah, it's something that is just too important not really to insinuate ourselves in.
Are you saying
And
the voice bill is trying to invalidate the Australian nation, essentially?
well, yeah, I mean that's really the what these activists say. I mean, in these leaked documents that I was just referencing, what they literally say is that, like, we got this country for free, and we haven't even begun to, like, pay for it yet. That we owe the Aboriginal people the rent, basically, on this whole country that we built. That they didn't do anything of significance to contribute to, that we built from nothing. We somehow owe them because they were roaming around Australia throwing sticks at things for thousands of years. This entitles them to something or other. And a lot of these Aboriginal activists, all of the top Aboriginal activists, none of them are like pure Aboriginals either. They're all like half white or even less. Some of them are, you know, 10% Aboriginal or 15% Aboriginal, if that. And so somehow we owe them, all of these reparations. One of in this report, they were saying that they want to push for a tax on Australia's entire GDP, Australia's entire gross national product. They want a cut of it to be
Would
paid
that
directly
be
to
would
them.
that be in essence a good summary of what the bill is, of what this Aboriginal voice is? Is it just another tax? And is that all it's going to end up being?
No, that's not all it's going to end up being. That's only one aspect of what they want to push for. Um, and we got to differentiate this as well. Like, the voice referendum has like specific. It has a kind of specific, structure. But then that's not the end of the agenda. They want to, if this succeeds, they want to then push for a treaty, and then to use that treaty and the kind of voice bureaucracy to administer and basically usurp the control of the Australian government and administer this, you know, basically this high agenda of wealth transfers, not just wealth transfers to Aboriginal people, but also um, Aboriginal kind of land ownership. So specific kind of like land taxes and land kind of administration. They want like to make it so, like, even basic things, like if you use like a kangaroo, you put like Qantas puts a kangaroo on the wing of the plane. They therefore owe Aboriginals X% for using their sacred symbol or something. There
Well,
was even
that's
proposals to change the Australian flag.
Harold Thomas, who invented. Did you mention this already? Harold Thomas, who invented the Aboriginal flag in the 70s, he gets paid some sort of royalty every time that flag is displayed or purchased by a government institution. So every time you see an Aboriginal flag flown out the front of a local government or some sort of government institution, local government building, that flag's actually been trademarked by the half Aboriginal, half white Harold Thomas, who created it in the 70s. So he gets paid every time the government uses it. It's just a moneymaker for this guy. How's that for some national pride history for you, for any Aboriginal viewers out there?
Yeah. Um, but like their agenda's complex. They want quotas, so they want to put like quotas in all these government departments or even maybe large corporations. So they have to have X% of their, I don't know, board of directors or certain executive positions filled, like an affirmative action plan, which kind of already exists to some certain extent in some, but they want to kind of make it far more extreme. Basically, tax cuts for Aboriginals, so Aboriginals don't have to pay tax, or they pay way less tax in addition to all these handouts that they're going to receive. I mean, it's really comprehensive. And yeah, I mean, we already knew that this is the kind of stuff that they were pushing for. But then the question is, how does the voice fit into this? Because the key selling point that, what the government is trying to say, what the mainstream media is trying to say now, what they're trying to say is basically, well, it's just going to be an advisory body. It won't have any actual power. It'll be totally under the control of the parliament. And it's just an advisory body anyway. So the parliament doesn't have to listen to it, or the government and its executive departments don't have to listen to it if they choose not to. And that it just exists for the sake of advising around policies that relate to Aboriginals. But I'm going to pull up just now, actually, like the exact wording. We'll go into the exact wording of the voice referendum, because that's now released as of like it's kind of confirmed, although there's still like some kind of parliamentary inquiry. I think the Liberals are trying to get um it changed, but basically it has like three components. Number one is there shall be a body to be called the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Voice. Number two is that the voice may make representations to the Parliament and the executive government of the Commonwealth on matters relating to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Now, if you break down this phrase, because it's really important to understand that a common sense reading of this phrase is kind of irrelevant when it comes to law, because there's something called what they call judicial activism. And what this is basically you have like left wing, progressive judges who will reinterpret documents to have this really expansive meaning to then justify all of these things that are over and beyond a common sense reading of this. So the first aspect of this, may make representations. Now, you would think may make representations just means to basically register concerns, give advice, this kind of thing. That's all that would mean. But you could see how this could be kind of argued in an expansive way. They could say, oh, any particular piece of government policy, if like the government can't basically pass anything unless it goes to the voice and gives the voice a chance to make representations. And then the voice could then drag it out. And so the government wants to pass a law, and the voice could get a legal injunction to stop them from passing a law for years while they do their own inquiries and processes or whatever. And so then the government would be at like the behest of the voice. If they wanted to get something done quickly, to make a concession. So the voice could say, oh, we're going to drag this out for 3 years so you can't do anything, or you're going to give us X, Y, Z, and then we'll let you go through with it, through like this kind of bureaucratic procedure that the courts could defend. And that's why the whole idea of, if it's just an advisory body, why does it even need to be in the Constitution? Because, and if it's subject to the Parliament, like the legislative power of the Parliament, why does it need to be in the Constitution? Because that's the thing, the Parliament could just make a voice with a law and not have to do this whole constitutional change, and it would still be exactly the same body. So why isn't that good enough? The only reason why that they would want to put it in the Constitution is because then it then gives the High Court the power to kind of interpret the voice into having all of these special powers. Because that's what a constitution is. A constitution creates legal checks and balances on the parliament and on the government. That's what a constitution is. So if you put something in the constitution, you then subject the power of the government and of the parliament to the courts. So then if you have these courts that there's all these progressive justices that run the High Court, and you get these like Jewish lawyers who want to bring cases saying, well, actually the voice, in like 3, 4, 5 years time, actually the voice should have this power, that power, and so on. Then the courts would have the ability to basically limit the power of the parliament or the government and elevate the power of the voice. Like, oh, the government isn't doing enough to listen to the voice. They need to kind of make this and that kind of concession to the voice, etc. And that's what you're inviting by putting this in the Constitution. There's no other reason why you want to put it in the Constitution other than to strategically, unless you were angling for this kind of thing. And that's precisely what the enemy is trying to do here.
I'm not really in the know about what the bill contains, but according to a post that I shared on my public Telegram channel just earlier today, this is from a channel called Aboriginal Voice Exposed. You can find it on my main Telegram channel. Secret government documents the National Indigenous Australians Agency was forced to release under Freedom of Information laws say that any voice to Parliament should be designed so that it could support and promote a treaty-making process. So that treaty thing seems to be central to the Aboriginal Voice Bill. Is that right?